10 villages in Ibariam, an agrarian community close to the Omambala or Izu rivers in Anambra East local government area, are affected by flood. Residents have suffered huge losses due to the flooding that's still wreaking havoc in the area. But they are assured of help by the member representing Anambra East constituency in the State House of Assembly, who says appropriate interventions have been planned by the state and federal government.
Next year, during this time, if we are planning to prevent such things from happening, we also identify this very area of prominent people of the barrier. Not just this place, just like you can see, we visited an Ikwem village and Ahmed village. And of course, we are all submerged in water. An event that never occurred before now. It is even worse than the 2012 unprecedented flood disaster that happened in Anambra State.
He tries to lift the spirits of those displaced and taken refuge in homes not heavily affected by flood. At the emergency camp in Umueri, the population is growing daily with limited supply of relief materials. Though the local government councillor praises the efforts of the state government, many things are still lacking.
Those who are bringing, they are trying their best. So we are still pleading with the local government and the NGOs to please come to our rescue. We need more foodstuff, more especially consumable and drugs.
But more critical is the health condition of many in the camp, especially women and children.
If we have an emergency, which the one we had, all we need to do is to move the patient down to General Hospital Umueri, which is the nearby General Hospital around this place. So at that place, we have all the facilities and all the materials to handle that kind of emergency. So that's what we have been doing for them.
Medical and food supports are brought in as the lawmaker hands over a small ambulance to the doctor in charge.
Nobody should pay, and all these drugs you are seeing are certified by NAFDAC. There are ranges of drugs that can take care of hypertension, malaria, any ailment. Infusions are there and injections.
The visiting team also observes the surging crowd of flood-displaced persons in other camps, especially in Aguleri and Onitsha, where food and medical supplies were also given.
All right, welcome back. Not a very good picture, I tell you. Well, yeah, we're joined, as you may have seen there, by His Excellency, Professor Chukwuma Soludo, Governor of Anambra State. Good morning, Your Excellency. Thank you for joining us on the program today. Well, it would have been nice to start on a very good note, having taken the seat, especially many know your last position as CBN Governor, but it's not any easy. Uneasy lies the head, now where's the crown, they say. I know as a couple of days ago, I think it was about 5 local governments that we understand were affected severely by flooding in Anambra State. So what can you tell us? What is the current situation now?
Well, I must say thank you very much. And thank you for having me. Good morning to you all. Well, it's not 5 local governments. It's now 8 local governments, actually. Wow. That have been underwater with hundreds of thousands of people displaced and hundreds of billions of naira worth of assets estimated underwater now, buildings, farmlands, and so on and so forth. The entire food basket of the state, and I would dare to say much that supplies food to much of the country, rice farms and everything, been submerged. Bridges, roads swept away, and so on. And like I said, hundreds of thousands of families displaced. But the people are trying to cope in 8 local governments. A number of people have risen up to the occasion, the government and the people. Community spirit efforts. Hundreds of thousands of people are now in their neighbors and families, relations, and so on and so forth. Places they've run to. We've tried much of what is going on is rapid response and coping strategies by the state. And but I must say, by the state and citizens, public-spirited individuals. Anambra, we have this communal spirit, and so private individuals, foundations, everybody trying to chip in the much they can, the spirit of leaving no one behind. For us, it's also been quite but empathy, finance, and so on, dealing with their health, their accommodation, their food, their clothing. Just trying to let them survive day-to-day basis. Of course, some people lost their lives in trying to escape with their own boats, as it were. May their souls rest in peace. And but the fundamental thing actually here for us is not so much about the ravage, of this flood. It's made a bad situation worse for us as in Anambra. The environment is Anambra's #1 existential threat. Anambra is the gully erosion capital of Nigeria, with about 30% of our land under threat by gully erosion. We have been desilting and cleaning up drainages everywhere just to let runoff water to be able to get to the river, as it were. But now the water from the river now coming on to overwhelm the, 1/3 of the state, even a little more than 1/3 of the state, as it were. But the question is not even, the question is how we cope now. What are we going to do to these hundreds of thousands of people when the water recedes and they get back to their homes to start life afresh? And what is the nation doing to prepare for the next one? Because we know that it will happen again and again. It has been happening. Cameroon will still open the dam again in the next 1 or 2 years, or next year or thereabout. What is a national plan to deal with the next one? Because it is coming. It doesn't come as an emergency. We know Cameroon wants us, and we know the next one will come. It's whether we're going to build dams, whether we're going to build whatever, or embankments along the banks of these rivers and so on when they upload their stuff. I think as a nation, we need almost like an emergency conversation. So let this not be another one where this will just be swept, thought, and life goes on. Because
what are you hoping
Yes.
to do to get that conversation started? Because right now, your state has been badly hit. You've said that the environment is an existential threat for Anambra, and you've also talked about how 1/3 of your state has been covered by these floods. First, our hearts to the people of Anambra who have been affected by the floods, and perhaps by extension to all Nigerians who are facing displacement and even have lost lives as a result of this. But I'm wondering what the next step is for you now as governor, looking at what is currently happening in your state.
Well, for us, two things. The #1 is that we got to survive first. That's deal with the immediate. For hundreds of thousands of people, it's a matter of life and death. And for us as government, that's the #1 responsibility, is to keep them safe, get them back on their feet, the much that we can within the limited resources of the state. But we are committed to doing any and everything that we could to get the people safe and to get back. We're doing quite a whole lot. In fact, in our manifesto, the environment is the fourth pillar, is the fourth major pillar of our agenda. Having planned livable, sustainable society, among which is dealing with the issues of the erosion control and so on and so forth, and flooding. These are the two major ones that threaten our existence. But beyond the immediate coping strategies and our own long-term agenda as a government in dealing with the environment and the issues of flooding and so on, there is a national conversation that needs to happen. And we're going to take this up, this interview, or this discussion we're having now, it's all part of it. And we're going to take this up at various fora where we need to raise this. Because there is a national emergency. We know that this thing is no longer an emergency. We can no longer deal with this perennial flooding as an as emergency, as unanticipated event. No, we knew it will happen. We know it will. The next one will come. 1 or 2 years from now, another massive one will come again. And the country must begin to now prepare and ask, what if it happens again? What's our response? And that conversation, I believe, must become a national conversation. In the run-up to next year's election, even as we speak, I expect, and I have said this before on Al Jazeera, I had expected that as we speak, beyond this, what I might call transient temporary palliatives from NEMA, they have come with a few things 2 weeks after the flooding was ravaging. But too little, too late, I must say. I mean, to be frank, too little. I mean, just like a little less than a drop in the ocean, as it were. That I think the National Assembly, the presidency, the National Assembly need, I mean, some kind of a more forceful response, especially in the next 2 weeks or so, or 3, when the flooding recedes, and these hundreds of thousands of people get back to their homes and to meet nothing. You'll have reptiles, you'll have all manner of things swept from the rivers and so on, you know, ravaging their compounds and so on. There will be health emergencies nationwide. I mean, most of the places affected, you would have people having to pick up their lives, agrarian communities that have been completely wiped off. Everything they had,
so
completely wiped off.
What's the plan? I mean, you are already painting a picture and you can already see that you will have some work on your hands. And I know that the areas which you are pointing to, for instance, health, is one of the areas where both federal government and state government have constitutional responsibilities. So what precisely is the plan when I mean, you have at least 2 to 3 weeks now when we're expecting that the flood waters will recede from what you have said. What exactly are you thinking of, at least for the people of Anambra, whilst you're also trying to prod the federal government to come up with a Marshall Plan in that direction?
No. On our own side, like I said, we are working 24/7. I mean, we're not relenting. I mean, whether it is in the area of providing them accommodation, whether it is in the area of providing health facilities, we have health facilities in every camp where we have holding camps, where we have these displaced persons. We have people, facilities, they are feeding and so on and so forth, even power, electricity, water, and so on. These are like the immediate coping strategies that need to be in place. I think we have done, if I may judge as a performance so far in this, I would say so far, so good. And we're also thinking about the next steps. The next steps is in 2-3 weeks, these people will be expected to go back home. The bridges are cut, the roads are washed away. There are communities and local governments now that are completely cut off. The roads leading to those places completely swept off by this ravaging flood. And it's not just washing off, it's just cutting off. Because like I said, erosion, only erosion is soil is sandy, porous. And so several of the roads washed off. It's going to require massive capital investment, resources that we are grappling to see where we get that from. It will require massive construction works to get people even to be able to drive back to their homes on road. It will require massive investments in trying to get these people back on their feet if we need to provide some basics, even for people to go back and buy some clothes to wear since they ran away, leaving everything to ruin, and so on and so forth. Anambra State is planning, and we are within the limited budget, limited resources at our disposal, about what we try to help these people even if it's, whatever we can afford to help them get back to their feet. But that's not enough. It's far, the financial requirements far in excess of what any state government can do. This must be treated as a national existential emergency.
If I could just follow up on that particular point, because
yes.
When even looking at the images, it's really shocking to a lot of people who are seeing that. But there's this statement that was released by the spokesperson of the president, Mr. Gabasho, who says, while not a national level emergency, the ongoing flooding is an emergency nevertheless. And they went on to say that each of the 3 tiers of government have a sizable budget at its disposal allocated monthly precisely to deal with these state-level natural emergencies, as well as federal agencies dedicated to doing the same. Do you think the government has a true picture of what is going on across the country?
I need to, I would ask him what this allocation is for dealing with this kind of ravaging where you sack population in about 8 local governments at once and destroying hundreds of billions naira worth of assets and livelihood and so on and so forth. And I will bet, and I'll let him let me know what it is that is allocated, ecological thing that comes a few peanuts that can't even fix one little bridge or whatever thing that is swept off. In Anambra's case, for example, that I described as the gully erosion capital of Nigeria, I will bet that if they spend 50% of the entire ecological fund in Anambra State in 1 year, it will still be, it will be significant, but not the kind of it will be significant, but probably touching 10, 20% of the problem. Anambra is a national emergency by itself, by the nature of the ecological challenge itself that requires special funding and attention. Because 1/3 of the land of Anambra is under threat. 1/3 of the land of the place is under threat. Villages, communities are falling under. And Loko, for example, get to Nanga, villages are submerged under erosion gullies every year.
And so, Your Excellency, if you acknowledge Anambra as a national emergency, pardon me if I'm coming there, if you acknowledge Anambra as a national emergency, being the capital of gully erosion in the country, your partnership with NewMap, that's the new World Bank assisted partnership, has already identified 969 sites, out of which only 15 have been prioritized. What are the mitigation strategies that your government will be putting in place beyond this national conversation? Do you consider it important enough to prioritize it in your budget? I ask this because, state governors have a penchant for, prioritizing other capital projects like roads, like an airport, but will your government consider this important enough to devote significant resources to, reconstructing these erosion sites to mitigate the adverse effects of climate change?
Are you hearing me now?
Yes, Your Excellency.
Hello? Are you hearing me?
Yes, go ahead.
Are you there?
Go ahead.
Hello?
I don't know what it takes to build.
Go ahead.
Are you hearing me?
Yes. Yes, go ahead, sir.
Okay. Yes, I just responded to you a moment ago that the environment, the ecology, the planning, the spending happen to be one of the 5 agenda items on our manifesto, on our programs. Like I said, the environment for us is our existential threat, the #1 existential threat for Anambra. And so, I said it a moment ago, we have our plans, desilting the drainages, we are constructing, tackling this head on. We're actually, there was a new map program which complemented the Air Force, and we have now taken it to the next level, spending quite a fortune on drainages and channelization of water and planning our communities. We're getting onto planning, planning the runoff water where they go. We're actually having a draft legislation now for people to be able to contain runoff water from their respective homes, and how we channel them and make sure that they get to the river and so on and so forth, rather than running off on the streets and causing gully erosion all over the place. So on our own part, we've identified this as our existential problem and a priority, and we're working very, very hard. If you've followed our programming, what we've been doing around our Onisha area, that's one of the things we started with. The silting of Sakamori at Opoko and going into Onitsha. We've been doing demolitions of buildings that stand on the waterways and so on and so forth, the runoff waterways that are being prevented from getting to the river and thereby causing erosion around the state. You've been following much of this. This is part of our determination to renew the place, to regenerate our cities and get them in a livable, more sustainable path. But, like I said, we will do everything that we have to, and that's our priority number one, because it's existential. But even with all of that, put together the entire budget of the state, the entire budget, and pour this into an environment alone, on just controlling the ecology and this gully stuff with villages being submerged by gully erosion every day. It's a drop. Far beyond, it's a drop out there. So, but we are not relenting. We're not just going to be saying, "Oh, this is bad," and so on. We're not talking about this simply because of this flooding. It's there in my manifesto. Is the environment that we identified as the number one existential threat of the state and the gully erosion capital of the country. Well, so for me, it's about what we do now, coping strategy with this crisis, but more so for the future, a two-part tier, what we are doing, and we will, as a people, as a state, do the maximum.
Okay.
But there is also the third component, which is the nation as a nation, recognizing where you have, because a threat to one is a threat to all.
Rightly so said, Your Excellency. We do thank you very much indeed for your time, and our heart goes out to everyone affected in Anambra, Kogi, Nasarawa, Bayelsa Rivers, everywhere. And yes, indeed, the country needs to have this conversation, and we will do what we can to ensure that at least we'll contribute to our quota. But we thank you for coming on, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
Well, there you go. Just going through my head is, you can imagine someone who's worked all their life to save up a little, and then flood just comes.
Those
and then
visuals are disturbing, Chamberlain.
Very much so.
Disturbing. But
well, that is the show today. Well, thank you all for watching. We just hope you stay safe out there and do what you can. We'll see you next time. I'm Chamberlain Usal.
Whatever it happens today, just keep your head up. Thank you for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
And from here, we urge you to keep the people of those states mentioned in mind. Thank you for watching Sunrise Daily. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
Amaya Makinde. Have a wonderful day.